Pow. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
My name is James.
And you know what? We always introduce ourselves at the start of the show, James. I'm fascinated with the shows that we put out, how many people that listen, of the 1.5 million people that listen to every episode. It's not quite that many. How many are new listeners? So if you are a new listener, then and you are on Twitter, just tag me and James, just say that I listened to the first time, because I'm interested. We introduced ourselves every time. Someone somewhere won't have heard the show before.
What suddenly makes you think, oh yeah, midway through game week 37, I'm going to start rocking onto Planet FPL?
Well, that's like, it's a lot of people listening to the show. There must be first time listeners. With every show that we put out, there must be a first time listener.
All right, at us, at me.
Yeah,
there's no point at Suj. At Planet FPL Pod.
I've been staying off Twitter this weekend for various reasons. I found it noisy. I find it was unhelpful.
Go on.
When's Twitter ever been helpful, to be honest with you? But it just felt like we're getting off on a different tangent here, but let's do it anyway. It feels like it's constant waves of people on sides of a fence throwing stuff at each other. It's like everybody that jumped on Chris Wood suddenly like, yeah, he scored a goal, and then not. And then it's like other people jumping in. Yeah, I got Danny Ings, and no, Danny, you haven't got Danny Ings. I've missed the penalty. And yeah, Harry Kane scored a goal, and no, Harry Kane's. It's like it's just constant waves of people on either side of a fence, and it doesn't actually then help you decide whether to do anything or whatever. It's just entertainment, basically. And so yeah, and because of the lack of football, obviously this weekend as well, it didn't help. And also, I was hungover on Saturday. That didn't help either.
Oh, was you too busy celebrating Friday, or was you in the garden? I didn't get my invite. Is that because you conceded?
Nah, well, it's so frustrating to concede that goal, but we'll talk about these games. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think it's at that point in the season now where it's less helpful. I've only got 2 transfers I can make now. Or I can take hits if I want to, but it's less helpful.
The Twitter community and the overall wide, we've said this loads of times, you have to remember that the FPL Twitter community is a small bubble of the whole greater scale. I mean, a really small bubble. It felt like, and I didn't buy Chris Wood, and I don't think you did either, Suj.
No.
It felt like everybody, I mean, I would have if I could have, by the way. It felt like everybody bought him. When you look at his ownership and you go, it's 2% fucking owned, mate. Like, don't stress about it. People going, oh, I really wanted to buy. Listen, it's just a little bit of it's just another differential this week. Don't worry about it. What I would say is, in terms of noise, I know what you're saying. Listen, there's plenty on Twitter that is helpful, be it linked to content creators, threads, articles, whatever. But this week, for those who are free hitting, genuinely, this is a good week to stay off Twitter. Because there is loads there in terms of people saying you need to do this, you need to do that. And if you're single-minded enough and able to trust in your own beliefs, I promise you, something you see on Twitter will probably influence your final decisions. It's a good time to actually avoid that if you think you're the sort of person that is easily influenced. Now, those influences could be positive and they could be negative, but you'll get a lot of groupthink on Twitter this week of this person's essential, that person's essential. Nobody's essential for game week 38. Literally nobody.
I'd still pick 3 Man City players though.
Yeah, but is anyone picking those 3 Manchester City players before 10-2?
No.
For the 3 hitters, yeah. I mean, we can all have it in our mind, but listen, as it stands now, we know that Rockstar's not going to have the information. He's already clarified that. That's fine.
You mean 10-3 though, right?
10-2. Kickoff is 3 o'clock on Sunday, so the FPL deadline is 2 o'clock UK time. So
are you sure?
Yes. So
why does it say on the website that kickoff for all the games is 4 o'clock and the deadline is 3?
I might be completely. Oh fuck me! Looks like I better change my deadline stream to 1:30 on Sunday then.
Do you know what, James? I missed. It's funny you're talking about the times, right? I missed the FA Cup semi-final yesterday because I thought it started at 7:45.
You were
I saw a tweet from our friend Andy, Let's Talk FPL, and I actually haven't gone back to Twitter to check it, in the morning, and he'd put a tweet out that said Ings 2 p.m, Son 4 p.m, Manchester United FA Cup semi-final, 7:45 p.m. or something. He put a tweet out that was the timeline of the day. I took that as my times of the matches. So based on that tweet, I thought, oh, okay, the cup semis at 7:45. I logged on 7:45 to BT to find 3-0 to Chelsea and 80 minutes gone. I was like, I just missed the game. Honestly, I didn't check other than Andy's tweet what time the match was, and I missed the game.
So, okay, yeah, you're right to clarify. All the games on Sunday are 4 o'clock. I thought they were 3 o'clock, actually. So I'll be doing a two-hour deadline stream from 1:30 on Sunday then, not 12:30. The point stands, though, that people are going to be waiting for these rumoured leaks. I would be, if I can give another strong piece of advice, only trust the sources that you know. There will be, like there was in game week 30, there will be people creating accounts trying to mug you off, and if they've got 160 followers and they work for a telecoms company or something, they probably don't have the correct information. Know your sources, decide prior who are the sources that you trust, and don't listen to anybody else. Indeed. That would be my advice.
Yep. There's really very little value in going through our teams because there's only been 3 games so far, and the bulk of the football's to follow in the next couple of days. Not even the fact that there's only been 3 matches in this game week, but the big boys are still to play in the next couple of days. West Ham, Villa, you know what I mean?
So, yeah, of course, mate, yeah.
Let's run down the games that we have had and anything we can learn. And let's start with a wrap-up of the Friday night game, West Ham 3, Watford 1. I nearly called it as a 3-0, but I meant half-time when I said 3-0, so I was right. Basically.
Oh, right, okay. Mate, the amount of tweets I was getting tagged into. All going around Suj's garden for a smoke.
Yeah. Crazy times. So, I mean, watching that game, to be 3-0 up so early in the game was beyond any of the imagination that I could have had. But looking at that first half, ultimately, when I saw the Watford team, I thought it's not bad. It's decent enough side. They'll have something about them. But Will Hughes and Tom Cleverley are just pointless in the middle of the pitch there. The amount of time and space our midfield players had moving the ball around in between the halfway line and the edge of the box, I was blown away. Like, if you've got Declan Rice getting time and space on the ball in between the opposition halfway line and opposition box, then their midfield is doing something wrong. And they were just non-existent. Like, Will Hughes, I think, is a good player, actually. I've liked what I've seen of him in the past. I don't know if you agree, James, but he's an attacking midfielder, right? He's an attacking-minded midfielder. He's not a holding midfielder. And his tackling was all over the place. He's not a good tackler. And the amount of times those two gave the ball away and just left space for us made it too easy. Once you go 3-0 up, that was that. I didn't see them coming back from that at all.
There was a massive key absence for Watford, and I messaged you about this during the game as well.
You did.
Who was it?
Capoue.
Huge absence. Essentially, it had twofold of problems for Watford, which actually got amended a little bit in the second half. Was one, Capoue's absence. Now, Capoue is, I would describe him as erratic in the sense that, even going back to his Spurs days, I remember the first time I saw him for Spurs, I thought it was going to be a fucking world beater, mate. He looked so good. And he's had games where he's got all the attributes, Capoue, but sometimes he switches off mentally, I think. I think concentration is not a strength for him. He's not a great tracker of runners, for example, but he sits in the middle of the pitch in front of the back four. He can tackle. He has the physical attributes. He's a good passer of the ball. He's very underrated from that aspect. And essentially what he does is, when Watford have control of a football match, he is the one who dictates how they will play in terms of tempo, which is really important. Now that's gone. Now suddenly, not only is he gone, but you've asked Doucouré to play a different role to where he's been absolutely excelling for Watford under Nigel Pearson. We'll come on to him. And he's had to play deeper. And suddenly you're asking him to switch his mindset. So now they're worse defensively and they're worse offensively, because Doucouré being close to Deeney was having a dramatic effect. As soon as they switched in the second half, wham, at the start of the second half, Doucouré powers through past people and Watford get a goal back. And unfortunately for sides like this, when you take a key component out, it becomes a massive problem. I think it's been very understated during this run of restart as well, how much Watford have missed Deulofeu. really, really missed him because he's the one who has. You can have the pace of a Welbeck and a Sarr, etc. But if you defend properly, they haven't got the technical quality, I would say, to beat you. Delafeu, if he's on it, can murder anybody. So they've really missed him. A side like that's going to miss two key components together like that massively. They'd only been missing the one. This was one too many for them. And I think West Ham exposed it. I'm not saying, for example, that the Such goal or the Declan Rice goals don't happen if Capu's on the pitch. But I think the game would have started completely differently to start with. On Will Hughes, you're right. He's not a holding midfield player, but he's also not good enough to be an attacking midfield player. What's been working really well for him is that balance of kind of sitting in between Capu and Decore, where again, you've got the power and the attributes of them physically and technically. And he's just a short little, turns it over, keep the ball, pass, move. Those were his good strengths. And I think he ended up in a role where he became really concerned about Decore, who can play that role, but hadn't played that role for a good 6 months or so. And it showed. And full credit to you, you took mass advantage of it. But there were things wrong with all of them goals from a Watford perspective. The first one, I wouldn't say I'd blame Ben Foster, but Antonio scored in the only place that he could, which was literally right between his legs. He's not aiming between his legs. He's gone wide on his left foot. He shouldn't really score from there. He's done the right thing. He's hit the target. It's gone in. The second goal, I mentioned about Souček being a Fellaini for West Ham, and I think it kind of got laughed at. It's not a joke. Souček is now at a point where I think people are looking at him going, wow, Suj, you foresaw that, didn't you? You knew. He's the bollocks, isn't he? He's going to get goals from midfield.
I don't think I would go as far as to say that I called it in that sense. I've not been preaching from the rooftops, but when he joined, I would say a couple of things. Firstly, I pointed out that he had a good goal record in Czech Republic for Slavia Prague. It's hard to translate it here, but he was a 1 in 2, 1 in 3 kind of player there. He scored 15, 16 goals before he came to us. Second thing was that when I can't remember who we played away from home, but it was one of the first games after Moisey had come in and what have you, and we outran the opposition. And Souček himself covered like 9 kilometers in one game or something. I can't remember what the stat was, but he outran everybody. He was the first player to actually put a shift in and get box to box. And I think what we've seen is him find his feet in the Premier League. He gets about, he's awkward. 6'4" is no joke in terms of size. And I don't see why it wouldn't continue this goal scoring. I've been really impressed since the restart with the amount of difficulty we've given teams on set pieces. The delivery's good. Bowen, Creswell, these guys can put a good ball in the box. Antonio, Diop, Souček. We've got players that will cause trouble on set pieces, and he's one of them. It's not surprising a lot of his goals have come from set pieces. That's not going to stop. So, yeah, if he's less than 6 million next year, I'd buy him straight away.
Yeah, I agree. I think 5.5 million, he's fourth or fifth midfielder starting next season as we would stand right now. People might think fourth, but actually you start the season with a 100 million budget. Yeah, he could well be the fourth midfield at 5.5. It very much depends on your fixture list, but he's got to be on most people's radar because he's the attacking presence that gets in and support. As soon as the ball goes wide, he wants to get in the box and he is powerful.
He's got an engine in him as well, which and stamina.
In terms of the attacking of the penalty area, that's genuinely what I meant in terms of the comparison to Fellaini. And who got the best out of Fellaini, really? Well, it was David Moyes, wasn't it? So I can definitely see that comparison. I can definitely see him being an asset. On the third goal, it's obviously a great strike from Declan Rice. That is the one absolutely we had question the goalkeeper. It's nowhere near the corner. He's got to do better, and he doesn't do
it was one of those that the angles were so awkward to see where it goes in. I mean, it hits the side netting, so it's got to be close enough to the edge.
Don't think it even did, mate.
It hit the side netting before it curled round, because I was trying to figure out, I watched it as many times as I could to try and figure out how close was it to the post. It definitely wasn't a top corner, and the keeper could have done well. But when he picked the ball up, he opened himself out to the right to give him that angle to curl it in, and that's what screwed up Foster's positioning for him. I don't think he expected Rice to go that way and shoot that way. But then I don't think he expected Rice to shoot, let's be honest.
Got to do better. Anyway, congratulations, you're now safe, mate.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but yeah.
You
I know,
absolutely are. You need a catastrophe. I mean, look, should you go and get beat 10-0 on Wednesday night, then there's still smell that you're in a little bit of trouble, maybe. But I mean, Villa ain't going to win twice anyway. And are
No,
Watford going to beat either Man City or Arsenal? No, I
no.
don't think so.
And we
And it's not going to
shouldn't.
turn around the goal difference. You got to bet goal difference than Brighton. You're above Brighton as it
Yeah,
stands.
exactly. I think. Yeah, I think Villa will beat on the last day of the season. Actually, if we're up for it, I honestly do. I think we'll get battered by Manchester United, especially because they lost the cup semi. But then I think we'll come back and we'll give Villa a good game, and then that will be it. Rebuild and restart.
Just before we finish on West
Mm.
Ham, and we do need to briefly talk about Nigel Pearson. Free hitters, and perhaps even non-free hitters, I think may very much be looking at your team for Sunday. If there was one that you would go for in that game, who would you go for?
So after weeks and weeks of both of us on our podcast talking about Jared Bowen being the best West Ham asset, I would buy Michael Antonio.
I agree for this fixture, yeah.
Yeah, he has proved me wrong in the sense that I've never doubted his ability as a player, but I thought he was struggling a bit for fitness and what have you. He's a beast. He really is.
However, at 4.8 million, Suchek is very, very interesting if you're looking to power in quite a few premiums. I think Suchek would probably only be one for free hitters, because I think Antonio probably falls into a line where will be of interest to both anybody going to this game at 38.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at moving away from Pulisic to Riyad Mahrez, but so if I can't wriggle around the budget, Antonio's a decent enough replacement of that 7 to 8 million price bracket.
Definitely of interest. Now, Nigel Pearson, we're going to do a Patreon pod on Watford tomorrow, so I'm not going to talk about it in too much detail. There are rumours behind the scenes that something's happened, which is beginning to make sense purely from the fact that actually sacking him does not make sense. It makes no sense.
When you say
at all.
something's happened, there's been an argument or something that's caused him to.
Well, even just look at their statement in sacking him, that they'd be making no further comment at this time. They didn't thank him for his efforts or anything.
No, I mean, he put
That's
a tweet
very
out
uncommon.
that was gracious enough, and he said, "I wish everybody well. Thanks to everybody for the messages, and I wish Watford well for the last 2 games of the season." But yeah, I mean, look, he's an outspoken, in-your-face character. Is Nigel Pearson? So it wouldn't surprise me if something's happened behind the scenes. Look, when he first took up the job at Watford, he was doing well for all intents and purposes. People were like, okay, we've got a manager that could go somewhere with the squad of players. So why there's so much fluctuation in an opinion on a manager in such a short space of time? Was it just the new manager bounce when he joined? Is that what we can put it down to?
If you look at the games from when he took over and they were bottom,
mm-hmm.
The league table since he took over, they'd be 12th. There's no way he can be sacked on football results. Now, I know Sixth Goal at Stephen Toomey, our Watford's correspondent, he's delighted that he's gone. I mean, his outtake on it is that it's going nowhere fast, and whatever happens, they're going to get spanked by Man City and Arsenal anyway. I don't necessarily agree with that sentiment. But I personally, I just can't see how there's any sense in sacking him unless there was something beyond the football reason here. There can't be anything in leaving Hayden Mullins, who is very well highly regarded as a coach, is going to make that better over the last 2 games, unless something happened within that dressing room, and we suspect it might have, that has completely fucked it up badly. Even if you go to Friday night, well, there's allegations of stuff which we're going to talk about on Patreon tomorrow, mate. Perhaps a bust up, shall we say. But even if you look at the second half on Friday night, I mean, the first half was completely unacceptable, but the second half, they did respond.
Yeah.
They did have a go.
Yeah, if they'd have got a second, I would have been nervy for the last 10.
Yeah, you would have.
100%. Yeah.
I agree with that. It never felt like they were completely out of the game. And I think it always felt like if Watford could get the second, anything before sort of 85 minutes or so, you would panic.
100%.
You would panic.
Yeah.
And then it would have been the draw we all predicted. But yeah, Watford FPL assets were just right off here because of the 2 fixtures they've got coming up.
Let's talk about Norwich Burnley. Chris Wood.
This game made me laugh a lot, and I'm really sorry to the Norwich listeners, but there was lots in this that made me laugh. All because of Norwich, I'm afraid. And yes, the whole Chris Wood thing was quite funny as well. Even the fact that his overhead kick, in quotes, came off his shin, and Tim Krul should save it.
So did I've seen Rooney shin an overhead kick and stick it in the top corner before. Yeah, Shin's all right. Shin's an acceptable part of the body to score a goal with.
That shinner was the best goal of the last decade, by the way.
Yeah, shin is a perfectly acceptable part of the body to score a goal with.
Oh my God.
But when there's karate chop.
The biggest surprise of all this is that Ipswich didn't... Ipswich, that really fucked people up. Norwich.
I just see our listeners diving down.
Yeah, I'll just change the switch and get it back to Norwich. They didn't capitulate like this, much worse in previous games. This felt like this is something that should have happened weeks ago. I felt this time I felt sorry for the manager because you could see him dying on the touchline as things got worse. The first red card, as I tweeted at the time, I'd like to know if Sean Dyche is getting his curly finger out for Ashley Westwood because we know that he hates divers and he's dived. However, the red card is the correct decision. My opinion is if that you strike someone with any kind of force above shoulder height towards the face or the head, you are likely to get sent off. So as much as clearly we know it didn't really hurt Westwood, he went down like a sack of potatoes, the red card's the correct decision. So too's the second one. There's no doubt about that. And I know in the end he doesn't make mass contact, but if you go over the top of the ball like he does when that's completely unnecessary, you are getting sent off. There's no bones about that. You make a tackle that goes over the top of a football, that's unacceptable. So it's also the correct decision. The own goal, I laughed so fucking hard. So hard. Considering the fact that it was so typical of Burnley that they got a man advantage, they're 1-0 up, and this cross comes in from Peters and there isn't a Burnley player in the penalty box, and they've still managed to concede. And I feel sorry for Godfrey because I really like him. I think he'll actually go on to be a good player. But it's just a disaster. He's like, Krul must shout at him time, which is the correct thing to do. And then he tries to control it. And the rest is history. And I was still laughing at that when Pope made this miraculous save at the other end, which wasn't too dissimilar to a brilliant save that Ben Foster made from Allaire the night before, where I don't know how he has saved that and managed to flick it round with the inside of his hand to the back post. And I was just laughing my head off at it because I could just see the rage of all the non-Pope owners. What I completely forgot was that all the non-Pope owners had at least bought James Tarkowski or Peters or Barsley this week as well. And It felt like everybody had a bit of that clean sheet. Not everybody had a bit of Wood, but a lot of people had a bit of that Burnley clean sheet, definitely.
I didn't have a bit of that clean sheet, James, but I can stomach it, I think. I was really umming and ahhing about my transfer this week, and in the end I made the Jimenez to Ings transfer. I felt like Ings could have gone mental against Bournemouth. We're going to talk about that game because he should have gone mental against Bournemouth. But the alternative move would have been getting rid of Soyuncu for a Burnley defender, which it just didn't inspire me, to be honest with you. But I couldn't, maybe looking in hindsight, that was the better move. But
can I just ask before we come on to it? It's probably bad timing because it's going backwards and forwards. But did you buy Danny Ings to block me?
No, I bought him because I thought, look, over the course of 2 games, he's got more opportunity to go mental. Now, had he scored the penalty against against Bournemouth, he would have been 1 goal behind Jamie Vardy, and then you can suddenly taste it. At which point, I think he would have been doing everything he could to get that golden boot. Whereas Jimenez was still no news about the baby. So I thought, you know what, this is now there's more upside on Danny Ings than there is on Raul Jimenez, and I don't have any other fires to put out. So it felt like the right move to make. And sure, the fact that it blocks you is an added bonus. It's not necessarily the driver, but I thought Danny Ings would get 2 or 3 against Bournemouth, and he nearly did. So that was the main driver. And Jimenez is too risky. I was on a side story here.
Was it really a risk when you got Phil Foden sitting as first sub?
Yeah.
If Phil Foden's going to start for Manchester City tomorrow now.
Why, do you work for Pep now all of a sudden? Listen, no one knows who's starting for no one knows who's starting.
Phil Foden will start for Manchester City tomorrow.
I think Pep's going to put out 11 players that we've never heard of to teach the rest of them a lesson for getting
Oh,
their butts handed to them by
we'll get
Arsenal.
there.
Yeah, let's just do the Premier League games first, and then we'll talk about the FA
Burnley,
Cup. Mm,
obviously Norwich, no one's considering for Sunday other than which Manchester City assets they're getting against them.
yeah.
Burnley, I think, particularly for the free hitters, are really interesting because what you're going to see in the next, and this is what I talk about Twitter bubbles, if you don't like this and think, say, Brighton will go to Burnley and win. And for that perspective, Brighton are worth a watch today, but you know my concern with Brighton is the rotation. And you'll see more of that, I think, in the game against Newcastle
So
tonight.
are you telling me the consensus on Twitter is that Brighton will beat Burnley?
No, I'm saying
yeah.
the consensus is if that's what you think, that Brighton will go to Burnley and win, and they are capable of that, the consensus will be that a Burnley defender is a must this weekend. Now, for me, on a free hit, I'll already draw my own conclusions that right now I'm probably going for the treble up. As it stands right now, Peters, Bardsley and Pope are all in my squad. I activated my free hit on Saturday night. I bought Peters and Bardsley before a rise. Doesn't mean they're going to stay there, but they're in there. They're likely to see further rises, I think, between now and Sunday. So that's generally the way I might go. A lot of that might depend on, say, Charlie Taylor's fitness, because if there's anything on Charlie Taylor where he's in the squad, I wouldn't take the risk on Peters, although I suspect Peters would probably stay in the team because it's how Dyche works, but it just wouldn't be worth the risk on Eric Peters. Bardsley's safe as, if you've got the extra money, Tarkowski is obviously a greater threat in terms of an attacking sense. And for me, obviously, Nick Pope's going nowhere. So I'm 99% sure I will have at least a double up of Burnley for Sunday and possibly a treble up. You can bet your life, particularly. In fact, it doesn't really matter on the Man City result tomorrow, but obviously, currently he's one ahead of Ederson in the race for the Golden Glove. And it would be a remarkable achievement for someone from Burnley to go and win that award. Chris Wood has basically said yesterday that they will do everything in their power to make sure he gets that clean sheet, so at least he's level with Ederson come the end of Sunday. So they are going to fight for their lives for him, even if that game doesn't matter. We know.
What I mean? They do anyway. That's one of their qualities, is the way they'll put bodies on the line. So
we know, but if they can't qualify for Europe, which if results go a certain way over the next couple of days, they're probably unlikely to be able to do so. What I'm saying is they're still going to put in a showing for their goalkeeper on Sunday. That's what I'm saying. So I think a lot of people will head that way towards double and triple Burnley on free hits. And because of the values of these guys as well, I mean, you could go a sweep of Peters, Barnsley and Long if Ben Mee's still ruled out, and you ain't even spent 13 million. And then you could power in other stuff as well. Worth watching.
Yep, indeed. Let's talk about Bournemouth, Southampton. Is the end of that game, James, one of the main reasons why you hate VAR, or was it the right decision and so that's fine? Because I mean, that's just horrible to see the way that Ramsdale was celebrating the goal, punch in the air. Callum Wilson and what's his name, Sturridge, and the way that they were celebrating, and then it's destroyed, and then 2 or 3 minutes later you're 2-0 down and your goal difference and suddenly got another little kick in the nuts as well. So it was horrible to watch from a neutral point of view, the emotional side of it. It was horrible. I just didn't like seeing that up and down for Bournemouth. But
the wife,
it was the right decision, though. So
yes, unfortunately it is. I mean, probably the more frustration there is linesman stick your flag up in the first instance solves the problem.
Because he was a good half a foot offside.
Well, to be honest, there's certain decisions which are forgivable for assistant referees, and there's certain ones that isn't. As this comes from a long throw, everything is stationary. He will be exactly in line at the right spot there. So there's no real mitigating circumstances for him not to give that decision, unless the one thing I can accept is if he's not sure that it comes off Surridge's head as the original flick on, in which case then he can't put his flag up. I understand that. And that might be what's happened here. From a Bournemouth perspective, they obviously lost a goal late on against Tottenham as well when it came off Josh King's hands. So they've had 2 home games in the last 3. where they think they've picked up an extra 3 points through last-minute goals and have been denied on both. I just find it really unacceptable that we're losing the emotion of these goals. The wife's watching the game with me and she said, I don't want to watch this no more. Like, I don't care about Bournemouth for or against. I mean, I think most people, because of the size of the club, have a little bit of a soft spot for them. I think it's just remarkable what they've done. Genuinely, for the 5 years or so, they've been a good addition to the Premier League and good to watch. There's a flip of that. We'll say, well, they've spent a lot of money that other clubs were never able to do so because of the size of their club, and that's always been questionable. But to lose that goal in that moment, that's my biggest problem with VAR. And I guess the reality is that if Bournemouth then stay up by a point because that goal is given, then that's wrong, isn't it? That's what people will throw back at me. But it's the emotion of football. There was something in this.
It was awkward. It just felt. It didn't feel nice.
Well, the way it happened from the camera angle as well, for everyone watching on TV, that you can't sense the offside in that goal. You just couldn't.
Mm.
So I would understand every Bournemouth fan losing their shit and celebrating that moment. Why wouldn't you? We'll come on to a couple of moments where I didn't celebrate yesterday. But to give VAR its credit, the handball against Harry Wilson, that's where VAR comes into absolutely brilliant. And I'll tell you why, because from the referee's angle on the other side of the penalty box, which is the right position for him to have, he can't see it, physically can't see it. And actually from the linesman's position, facing it completely straight on, which he would have been, actually it's also not, he can't be probably certain if it's hit his hand or his face. So he's got to be sure to be making that decision, so therefore he doesn't make it. Plus he's also probably thinking, well, if it is a deliberate handball, VAR will give it anyway. So I understand why the linesman didn't give that either. It's a complete bottle job from Harry Wilson because he doesn't want the ball to hit him in the face. I'm not going to fucking lie about that or paint it any differently. Weak-minded to put his hands up like that because there's no excuse. He's not got any other bodies around him. He puts his hands up in front of his face. Unfortunately, like it or not, you're getting X amount of money and the ball's got to hit you in the face, mate. So 100% is a penalty. And that's where VAR really works for me because the game stopped and there's no emotion in the moment. So VAR is not killing something emotionally. It's them making the right choice. It's when it gets involved with the emotion of the offside decisions. I don't have a problem with VAR getting involved in penalty decisions. Absolutely none. I think that's where I want the right decision. I don't want it getting involved in offside calls. I can't really take it anymore with the losing of the emotion. That's not what we fell in love with football for, was for the referee to make the right fucking decision on a goal. No. Because then I watch a game a couple of hours later and I don't celebrate Tottenham's first 2 goals. I literally didn't say anything. The first goal, I turned to the wife and I said, if you're wondering why I'm not celebrating, I think it's offside. I just sat there. That's not right. That can't be how the football that we're enjoying. Anyway, Bournemouth have fucking killed themselves here. Tactically, I liked what they did first half. I thought the first half was a particularly good watch, and I suspected this game would be because of Southampton as well. What I liked about Bournemouth in the first half was they tried to turn Southampton at every opportunity and therefore didn't really allow them to press. They were constantly looking to get Josh King or Stanislas in on the flanks in behind. And they had good chances. Callum Wilson was particularly culpable with a couple of chances aerially in the first half. One he should throw himself at, and the second one a header he has to do better with. I think he's really short of confidence at the moment. I was surprised that Solanke didn't start, actually. When Bournemouth gave themselves problems was when they tried to play through midfield, and then Southampton hunted in packs. And that's where the first goal comes from.
I jumped on your deadline stream for not long, for about 5 or 10 minutes.
Just to see what my team would be, so you could block it.
No, I didn't. I already knew because you tweeted it earlier. I think you probably tweeted it a couple of hours earlier.
Yeah.
But the exact moment that I jumped on your stream was when you were telling everybody all you need to know about Bournemouth is that the only player I would pick is Dominic Solanke, and that's all you need to know. And I was like, yeah,
genuinely, yeah,
that is right? Yeah. So yeah, if you're not going near Bournemouth, if Solanke's the best you can do, that's bad.
They could be an interesting prospect for free hitters on Sunday because they will have to go for it if it's still up for grabs. And we've got Neil Grover at AFC BNG and Spirit Blues, our Everton and Bournemouth correspondents. We clashed the correspondence this week, which we're going to release on Friday. So we'll get the detail on him there if he thinks there's any Bournemouth assets to go for. I suspect he'll probably say no. But actually, if you pinned me again now and said you have to stick one in that team, even though he didn't start yesterday, I probably would go for Solanke again. I think he's the most capable, and I think he's a good player. And I think if they go down, he won't be there for long next season. I think he'll go on to prove he's a good player.
If West Ham were only allowed to go shopping at one of the relegated clubs, well, let's say the bottom three right now are the ones that are going to get relegated for argument's sake, Bournemouth would be the one. I know Harry Wilson's not their player; he's Liverpool, but likelihood of him getting minutes at Liverpool is slim. David Brooks, Callum Wilson. I mean, they've got players there that I would feel comfortable if we bought 3 or 4 or 5.
Harry
Even
Wilson,
Sturridge looked all right as well.
Harry Wilson, I'm afraid to say, he's good at set pieces and he's got a good shot on him. That's all he is.
You don't think he's got more?
There's no way he'll make it at Liverpool. I'll tell you that right now.
No, he won't make it at Liverpool, but I think he'll make it at another Premier League club.
He might do because he's a technical specialist.
Yeah.
But, he's not growing or developing in the way that, say, it's difficult to compare. But James Ward-Prowse has been in that Southampton team forever. And he's still only about 24, 25. He's been in the team since he's 17. And look how he's developed as a footballer. I don't see the development and the drive in Harry Wilson. And I to be honest, that yesterday with the handball would really hack me off if I was a Bournemouth fan. This is what's at stake for me, and you decide to put your hands to your face. Yeah. It's not acceptable. There's no reason for him to put his hands there. On the goal, what I was going to say, Suj, this kind of sums up the first goal. And one of the keys of this is how many men Southampton get forward on the Danny Ings goal. And although the assist ends up being Redmond's, really the assist belongs to Ryan Bertrand, who doesn't touch the ball in the whole move. Because his run on the overlap takes 3 Bournemouth players away from Danny Ings, and they let him come back inside on his right foot. And that's the naivety of Bournemouth, because the threat really isn't Ryan Bertrand on the overlap. He's making sure that guy doesn't shoot. And we said it every week from the Norwich game onwards, that he loves that type of shot and goal.
Yeah, when he opened exactly up, the same you knew goal he was again. Score, right?
Yeah,
you felt he was going to score. I was like, okay, it's going in, because he's in that confident vein of form that shots like that come off. Like Mason Mount's goal, he got a bit lucky with David De Gea just being garbage. But Danny Ings's, I knew he was going to put it away.
They had that. If you look at the goal again, it's not even just the 3 players that go towards Bertrand, but all of them, there's pluses and negatives on it. They all rush back really, really quickly, and it's credit to them. So they lose the ball and they recover ever so well. They then, however, forget what they've got to do when they get there. They've just become bodies. They might as well be mannequins. And the one thing you don't do is let Ings in on his right foot. No. Show him to his left. He can't score that goal on his left foot from there. I'm telling you. No. So
Agreed.
He had a similar effort in the second half. The penalty
was crap.
Swing. I mean, that's cost people. I sent 2 tweets out during the game. One, everybody's vice captain just scored, and I realised he wasn't everybody's vice captain. And I sent another one out saying everybody's vice captain just missed a penalty. Because again, Twitter feel that's how it felt like. Everybody vice captain Danny Ings. The penalty miss is a 9-point swing. He either gets 13 points or he ends up with the 4, because he obviously misses the penalty rather than scoring, and he gets battered on the BPS for the penalty miss. I think on a penalty miss on a BPS, I think it's minus 18 or something.
Wow.
You get absolutely battered for it. Wow. So pre-penalty, he's top for BPS, and he misses the penalty and he gets absolutely hammered. So
take it on the chin and move on.
Even if he'd scored again later in the game, he might have still not hit top bonus. You just get hammered so bad. There's so much weightage towards penalties and BPS. I've spoken about this with the goalkeepers before. There's way too much weightage on it. Because he's probably not deserved to come away from that game with no bonus, actually, because he played very well again.
I disagree. I think that penalty was poor enough that he deserved nothing.
Well, there is that, yeah. I mean, the penalty is awful.
Pathetic.
I'm not a fan of stuttered penalties unless you're on the Jorginho or what you see. Fernandes went back to a technique we've seen recently in the semi-final, where he's waiting on what the goalkeeper does in terms of his final strike through the ball.
Yeah, if the keeper doesn't move,
don't like those penalties.
Then that's what happened to Ings,
He just didn't look like, for a player who is great in front of goal, he just didn't look like he was going to score the penalty. No. As soon as he started, I was like, even in that split second, oh, he's not scoring it. It just didn't look right.
No.
Put your foot through it if you're not sure, mate.
Let's talk about Spurs Leicester because we've still got the FA Cup games to get through as well. Are Leicester in danger now, James, of becoming Rex T Rex? Just like, and I don't know if it's a home or away, but they're just Jekyll and Hyde or whatever. Because one week they'll do so well, and the next week there's nothing there.
Chilwell, Pereira, Sienchu, Madison. Change a system that doesn't suit them. It's way too many things wrong with them at the moment. And I have a little bit of sympathy with them from that perspective, because I think the real huge miss has actually been Pereira. He's a brilliant, brilliant right back. If Leicester don't qualify for the Champions League, Tottenham should go over there and say, how much do you want? And if that's the only signing we made this summer, I'd be delighted with that. He's a brilliant right back.
I saw a crazy stat or something the other day. It was on the charts of like most goal scorers, most assists, and then there was most tackles. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's top of the most tackles for the season. Pereira, I saw, was second.
Yeah.
And this guy hasn't played for about 4 months.
Hasn't played since like February, yeah.
Exactly. I was like, how are you still second in the most tackles made and you haven't played for God knows how long, mate?
Well,
he's missed a third of the season. Incredible to think that, obviously we think about his attacking threat and the amount of assists he gets. Defensively, he makes a lot of tackles as well.
That's why he's in everyone's Sky team, mate, pre-injury, because the amount of tackle bonus he gets is off the charts, basically. He's brilliant at it. In terms of Leicester, if you want another stat, so since Nigel Pearson took over Watford have got more points than Leicester. If you want to sum it up, that's their form since what's that? Game week 12 or so, they'd be about 13th.
Wow.
So that's over a sustained period. So if they don't fix this quickly, and I realise missing those key men is particularly important, and they probably will go into the market and improve again, they will be nowhere close top 4 next season as it stands. And in fact, demise has been so sharp that, in spite of the fact they've obviously had a great season, if you just take it as an overview, there are a lot of Leicester fans are now very concerned about what the manager's doing there. Now, I'll have your manager if you don't want him, by the way, mate, because I'd rather watch football. And I just think suddenly when you're broken into having to play people like Wes Morgan, who was obviously great for the title team, but he's finished. Ryan Bennett was a bizarre signing from Wolves, because I don't think it's Premier League quality, personally. Never mind to be going and signing for a team that's trying to qualify for Europe. Christian Fuchs, another one, good in the title season and that. Did he even play in the title season? Yeah, I think he must have, yeah. Not good enough. And you've got people who flatter to deceive, unfortunately, like Damari Gray. Are you ever going to show what you're really worthwhile? The only one that stood out a little bit was Harvey Barnes, was threatening at times. Not good enough. That said, they've had loads of efforts on goal. It's a repetitive theme in Tottenham games. The threat that they caused was all on the left-hand side of the pitch in the first half. All on the left-hand side. I've had big praise for Lucas over the last 2 games. Defensively wasn't quite right in this game. And Sergio Aurier, bless him again for playing again, and was much better the longer the game went on. But every decent attack Leicester had in the first half came from the left-hand side. Full credit to the young boy, Luke Thomas, impressed. Good little player. Certainly an improvement in that system than playing Christian Fuchs out there. I can't see Leicester beating Manchester United on the final day, and I don't think that they'll finish top 4.
Agreed. Talk to me about Spurs. For once, don't moan about Mourinho. Tell us how happy you are, because you've won a few games on the bounce now, and you're doing all right. I mean, there was a time, probably a week or 2 before the lockdown, where we talked about Mourinho and a Tottenham, and you showcased how his record was really good. Like, if you look at it on paper, number of results, points picked up, etc., etc. Yet he was still sucking your soul. But come on, you're winning games. I'd rather be in your situation than ours, for example.
You'll probably see that stat that's knocking about again today. 44 points, the 4th best in the league since Mourinho took over. Whoopie-doo. 44 points from 25 games is not good enough. It needs to be at least 50. It's not good enough.
It's 2 wins.
I need 2 points per game. Now, the credit is, since lockdown, 17 points from 8 games is good. I'm still hacked off about Sheffield United and Bournemouth games, because if we'd have done those games properly, we would actually, what I thought might be there was, yes, there was still a chance of top four. We would be right in it, and people would be looking, going, Jesus Christ, these lot are flying. We're not flying. I had a lot of tweets after the game saying, James, you must be chuffed. James, you must be thrilled. My question back would be, about what?
Winning games of football.
Brilliant. This wasn't good.
You'd rather win. You'd rather win than lose.
Don't get me wrong. I think it's pivotal at the moment that the games of football are won. But if anybody suddenly had their head turned, I'm afraid I just don't see it. What I do see is what I've asked of him, which is at least show me what you're good at. Yesterday and the Arsenal game, I've seen things that showed me defensively what he's good at, because I knew, again, like I knew when we scored against Arsenal, and I knew it yesterday, the game was never in danger once it went 3-0. To be honest, at 2-0, I thought, well, this is in the bag because of how much better we looked defensively. So that's where the major credit will come. Essentially, we had 4 attacks in the game, and 3 of them ended up in goals. The first 2 I couldn't celebrate because of fucking VAR. The first one, you can't even see Son in shot, so I assume he's offside. The second one, at that speed, you can't tell if Kane's on or offside. The third one, I roared out the chair and went, what a fucking goal, Harry. So emotionally, I didn't feel like I'd get involved in the game. In the second half, we did nothing but defend the game and make sure we won it. And you can say, yeah, great, credit, well done. Our best player was probably Hugo Lloris. So it wasn't like, and I'll talk about this with Arsenal, it wasn't like we completely shut the door and they weren't having efforts on goal. There were still plenty of efforts in goal. At the time that we scored the second goal, it looked like a matter of time before Leicester were going to score. And then we get a couple of breakaways, and they're expertly done. The other pleasing aspect is, I've said that we really struggle on the counter-attack at the moment. What we've shown to be in these Newcastle and Leicester fixtures is clinical and ruthless. And that's a very, very good trait that they're building. It does help when you've got a superstar striker, mate, who, if you give him a sight of goal, you'll see what he'll do in front of it. Exactly. That's helpful as well. But was I thrilled or chuffed with what I watched yesterday? No. I think at the moment, we were asked pre-lockdown, which teams do you think will benefit and which teams won't? And my conclusion is, at the moment, there's no team getting the benefit of lockdown more at this moment than Tottenham. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, the slower pace of the game, generally, although you can see constantly week on week, teams' fitness is building. The slower pace of the game suits everything methodically that Mourinho wants to do. The second thing is the crowd. The no crowd is doing them a massive favour at the moment, because there's a lot of people who are split in opinion, like me, in terms of what they want going forward for the football club. Now, during that game yesterday, and during any game inside the ground, I'm not going to be hurling abuse, because there's nothing to be gained by doing that inside a football stadium. But I would have watched the second half in that stadium yesterday, bored out of my mind. Now, Spurs fans are going to have to pay the most expensive season tickets in the country, but I presume possibly the fucking world, to watch football, and are going to be served up what they watched in the second half yesterday. I'm afraid it's not going to go down very well. At 3-0 up, show me more. Go and kill this team, because as Aaron Lager, our Leicester correspondent, correctly highlighted during the game, every time Tottenham go forward, they look like they're going to score. The problem was we only went forward 4 times.
Right.
I think we could have done more damage yesterday to them, because you're looking at people like Bennett and Morgan defensively, young kids at wing backs in Justin and Thomas. They're there to be completely exposed and annihilated. At that point, at 3-0, I want them to show a bit more freedom and go and play. That's what I want. I don't want to go and watch that second half. Did anybody enjoy watching the second half yesterday? Because I didn't. I sat there through the whole half thinking, well, we've won this. That's great. And I enjoy what I'm seeing in terms of the way we defend the penalty box much better now. And you'll get the praise for that. And the clinicalness of the team. Those are the 2 positives. That, when crowds come back, is not going to wash at our football club. People aren't going to enjoy it. It's not what I pay 1,500 quid a year to go and watch, mate.
Right. So tell me something which the listeners will want to know. How many Spurs players are under consideration for your free hit, or are you still staying away with a barge bowl?
For me, none.
Okay.
For you, the listener, the recommendation would be, if you want one, go and get the man who's fit, and in form and only needs a chance.
Yeah, I think
It's
Kane
Harry.
will be a differential because of his ownership this week for the people that go and want to get him in a free hit.
If you're asking me at the same value right now, and they are very similar, Kane or Aubameyang, I would say, honestly, my advice would be Aubameyang. And it's because of the opposition.
Yep.
Aubameyang be playing a Watford team that might have to, during the game, might have to come out and play. If they're already safe, if they do miraculously pick something up against Manchester City, you're going to go there and not give a shit. And Palace, for all their weaknesses at the moment, are still a tough team to break down.
Yeah, they were difficult against Manchester United.
It doesn't smell like a Heung-min Son game to me, just from a Tottenham perspective. It just doesn't feel like a sunny game. Defensively, if you want to go for Aurier, I mean, again, fair game to him. It's okay. But Spurs have looked so much better since we've now got better balance in the fullbacks, and he's not playing like an unorthodox right winger, basically. So his attacking returns are going to be on the wane. I'm not sure if he even put a cross in yesterday. I would rather none of them went forward and they just played as a really kind of 1980s style back four than actually Aurier bombing up. At least it's balanced. At least it's balanced with that flat back four. I can live with that. Be very careful. I've seen quite a few people mention Toby Alderweireld. Very, very careful. Eric Dyer will be back from suspension. I think Alderweireld and Sanchez will probably stay together, but there would be enough doubt in that to avoid those two players. So if you do want to get Spurs defensive, it would be Aurier. If people want to go for Kane or even Son at his value, I'm not particularly going to put you off as a 1 game week punt. But it won't be for me. I won't be going near them.
How did you feel about the FA Cup semis? I mean, from my point of view, both were upsets. I would have thought Manchester City and Manchester United would have won, but they both didn't. And to a certain extent, comprehensively, I mean, Arsenal played well. They did their jobs very well. And Chelsea were emphatic in the end, really 3-0 and 3-1 by the end. But to be 3-0 up going 5 minutes into the game, I don't think in either game you could say, because I only caught the highlights of Manchester United Chelsea because obviously I follow Andy, Let's Talk FPL on Twitter, and I can't read. But it's hard for you, I understand, because of your Spurs allegiance. But I felt glad for Arsenal after the semi-final win. I felt happy for them. Yeah, it's hard for you, I understand, but because of your local allegiance. But the fact, I like Arteta. This is the thing, right? I like Arteta. And for me, that was a vindication of, if you do what the manager says and listen to him and don't do Arsenal things, as we call it, they've got a decent future in the next couple of years as he builds the squad that he wants. So it was more even around Arteta and I think what he can bring. Because I've got fond memories of Arsenal from the late 2000s and mid 2000s when they were playing great football, and I didn't have that rivalry that you had, so I can understand the difference. But I've got fun. I think they're a football club that when they play at their best, they're lovely to watch. Now they've lost a lot of that, as you would with a manager who's been there for 20 years leaving. But I thought, okay, you know what? I felt, yeah, if you show those signs, I'm happy for you. That's how I felt at the end of it.
Fuck me, Suj.
I know it's hard to praise Arsenal, but
no, I will praise them. I was going to start with Manchester City, but we'll do this the other way around. Arsenal were thoroughly deserving winners. I felt watching the game the first 15 minutes that City were going to just swarm them.
Can I interrupt you 1 second?
Yeah.
If they then go and lose their next game against Villa, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Oh, I'm gonna come on to that, yeah, because I agree with that.
That's the irony of it all with Arsenal, isn't it?
Yeah. I thought City looked like they were going to batter them, is how it looked. And quite oddly, and I'll come back onto this with City in a bit, City have been starting games quite slowly recently. It felt like it was just going to come. And then obviously Arsenal started to grow in a little bit of confidence. And fair game, they tried to play through City. That's the way they're coached. Certainly at 0-0, the game very much changed once they went in front and in the second half. But they scored a brilliant goal. And the key thing in the goal is Lacazette. He's the key to that goal in terms of his first touch, back to goal on the halfway line, drawing people out with him, spinning, playing the ball wide. Then they've got attacking runners. Then we know that with time, Pepe has got ability. And obviously, if Aubameyang is in front of goal, he is a killer. He is a killer in front of goal, an unbelievable finisher. So even in the goals, it played to their strengths. They've got footballers. They play through. Lacazette, as I said, his role absolutely pivotal. And part way I mentioned that about Lacazette is I think he'd be great for Man City, and people might laugh at that, but I'll come back to that. In the second half, the defensive performance was absolutely superb, genuinely. David Luiz was nothing short of magnificent at centre-half, and there were a couple of other very good performances. Tierney, Maitland-Niles, who hasn't played much recently, did a very good job at, when we say left wing-back, essentially it was left back in a back five in the second half.
He was the one that really stood out as a little bit, because I didn't expect to see him in the starting lineup.
Yes.
And then to perform that well as well. I was like, where's he come from all of a sudden? He was almost a forgotten man for me a little bit.
Well, I think the choice there was very much a lack of trust in Kolasinac defensively. And he knew that he was gonna have to end up with 5 people. If they were going to win the game, there was going to be a point in the game where he needed 5 people defensively you could trust. Yeah. Now, Maitland-Niles, really, for me, he's still a midfield player. But think of him facing up Mahrez one-on-one, etc. You think, well, which one do I fancy? Well, at least Maitland-Niles has got the pace to go with him and stuff. And he's reliable. He's an Arsenal kid. He'll pull the shirt on and die for him and stuff. Extremely good defensive performance to the point you're looking at them and going, Manchester City are not going to score here. The second goal is a catastrophe from City's aspect because of how easy it becomes for Arsenal. Again, hold up, ball in behind, Aubameyang's never going to miss. And they deserve to win the game. The difference between, and there is comparisons to this, the way Arsenal played in the second half on Saturday night to the way Spurs played on Sunday, in my opinion, was very, very different. Now, Arsenal became so defensive that Mourinho would be proud of it, but it was the best way to win the football match, was literally to have 5 in the line, no spacing in between. Think back to the first live show we did, Suj, where I told you about Man City picking up balls in pockets and then playing slide-through balls. The only way to get through Arsenal in that second half was to go wide, and then they trusted themselves that aerially they would win anything that came into the box. And David Luiz won most of them, by the way. So really good from Arsenal. They were so compact. What I mean in terms of the comparison is, like I said, Lloris made so many saves in the game for Spurs, particularly in the first half. One brilliant one, particularly from Perez, where we were having mass problems down the right-hand side of our pitch. Arsenal didn't have a problem. If City conjured up a moment of brilliance that beat them, you put your hands up. Like, I spent the whole of the last half hour of that game going, give the ball to De Bruyne, give the ball to De Bruyne. The game for me disappeared for Man City completely when Mahrez went off. Because he was the only other one that looked capable of running at them and committing people. And actually, although it probably looked grim watching, Arsenal were relatively comfortable. Particularly from 2-0. It really wasn't a bother. It was just sit there, be defensively diligent, clear your lines, go again. It became like a training game. And it got me thinking about City and the issues with City. Because our friend FPL Pringle, he tweeted from his personal account after the game saying, this is now happening too often. And I didn't ask him what the comment was, but I think it was in reference to the fact that they keep going behind in games. So I did a bit of digging. And I only looked at City's league results this season. So since going back to the start of last season, they've been behind in 19 games, which is in, what's that, 71 games or something. Is it 75 or something? It's not a lot, right? 13 of those instances have been this season. Now, they've obviously lost 9 games. Manchester City have recovered to win 1 of those 13 games when they've gone behind this season. Do you think that's good enough?
No, it's not title-winning form. Let's agree with that. I mean, losing 9 games is not title-winning form in the current climate of football.
To give you a comparison, Liverpool gone behind 9 times this season and won 5.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course. But I think the point here is there's almost a little bit with City. I'm beginning to feel that, and we've mentioned previously about them starting games slowly, that a lot of teams are beginning to think, well, if we're going to beat them, the best way to do it is to score first, and then we know it's going to get grim. Now, you get certain ones, like the Southampton one, there's no real criticism. I just think it was a freak result. that on Sunday, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, have you got anything different? Anything different? Like Gabriel Jesus, who we've spoken about a lot recently as an FPL option, like he's non-existent in a game like that. He doesn't do anything for me. And that's why I mentioned, say, someone like Lacazette, who's really good back to goal, actually, far better than he's given credit, who then spins and gets people into game and gets runners going forward, would be far better for them. I would not be surprised on what I saw at that game at the weekend. Someone else who would fill that role very well for them, would cost a lot more money, but is Harry Kane. It would absolutely work for them at the moment. And you probably think, oh, Kane, Man City style. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they need differences. And what a different option when they basically resorted to throwing the ball into the box. It was the only way they could pass it backwards and forwards as many times as they wanted. Arsenal were not moving. It was going to be right. You're going to score from range or you're going to beat us from across. And it didn't feel like any Man City player was ever going to win a header and score from across. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. You have these off days. You play that semi-final again. I think City would win it 3 out of 4. But
yeah, I agree.
But football on any given day is like, if you play at your best and the other team are not up for it, you can beat them. I think it highlights. You're talking about the issue there that they've got going forward, right? You need a slightly different option, maybe, or what have you. The fact that they're going behind in games is because they're defensively a little bit shaky. So I think they'll be spending in the middle of the defense before they'll be spending at the back. Harry Kane at Man City, I just think he's just one of those strikers. You put him in any team, it doesn't matter because he'll adapt and the team will adapt. So I don't think I would not really do a massive tactical analysis on whether or not he fits their system or what have you. I think he'd be fine. Like I think he could score as many goals as Aguero does if he was in their setup.
What I'm saying is, I think the assumption always was that if Kane moved to another Premier League club, I think the assumption always was that it would probably be Manchester United. I'm now saying to you, I think that the assumption on that would be, with Aguero's increase in years, obviously frailty to injury, etc. And Jesus, for me, who's been there years now, who, if it's in front of goal for him against weak opposition, is talented and is going to score goals. Like, I still wouldn't be surprised if he got 4 or 5 in the next 2 games, for example. But I think at that top level, when you're playing against teams who are going to defend well and you need different options, there wouldn't be a better option for them than Kane. And like I said, someone like Lacazette even would be a decent little option for them in different types of games, who is better back to goal and draws people into games better. So I think City have got an issue where they have to start questioning why they're not getting back into games, because the one game even that they did win, which was against Southampton, it was a Southampton team which, apologies, was very recently after the 9-0 against Leicester. In fact, I think it was their next league game. It was shot defensively, and they scored 2 goals basically from crosses, admittedly. I think both came about from Mendy crosses, if I remember correctly, in basically the last 5 minutes. City have got to start asking questions of why the football they play is not breaking teams down when they go behind. They have to do more, and none of their players impressed at the weekend. None of them, even to De Bruyne. I obviously wanted him to score. It was give him the ball and hope he could provide a miracle. David Silva, not good enough, and we rave about him. That's the only time you'll ever hear me say those words.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Man United. I know one of the questions that a lot of people are going to want to ask, but I'm not going to ask it, and we're not going to do it because it actually has zero relevance. Is off the back of that performance on Saturday. Who plays for City on Wednesday, isn't it? Their game, Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever it is.
Tomorrow, Man City, Tuesday. Yeah.
Because we've all picked our FPL teams, so there's nothing you can do about it anyway. So we'll address the City Pep rotation on Friday because we'll have information from Tuesday about what's happened, and there's nothing you can do with your Tuesday team anyway because you're set.
I think people want to know what we think. For what it's worth, I think Foden, Bernardo Silva definitely play. Rodri definitely plays. The whole back 4 will change. The rest of the team would be very unpredictable. So I think from Sterling, Mahrez, Jesus, you're probably looking at one of them playing.
Manchester United, as predicted, a little bit did chop and change their formation in terms of kind of 3 at the back, and then obviously chopped and changed again for their FA Cup game. Gary is my cat playing did say he thought that they would, and it didn't work.
He didn't fancy it. The problem with United is, and spoken about, is once you take components out of that team, actually what's behind is not very good.
I looking at the team on paper, and you look at Fred and Matic in the middle, sharp intake of breath. Lindelof, Maguire and Bailly as a three at the back.
They've both been good, and in fact, Fred has excelled when they've played that particular system with a back five. And with United, it does very much feel like a back five, whereas with Chelsea, it felt like with Alonso and Reece James, they felt like attacking wing backs. So it was two different systems within the same system of both sides, basically.
Same formation, maybe. The thing is, when I say it's an intake of breath, it's not even that they're not good players. They are, because we've seen it proven. But compared to their their full strength 11, Pogba and Matic, and then Greenwood and Fernandes and Martial and Rashford, this team, this B team or reserve team, is not anywhere close.
I think what happened here was he wanted to rest some bodies, which I think is understandable because, Martial, Pogba and all them played a lot of football recently. So I can understand that, Greenwood as well. And I think he's looked at it and gone, they've had some success when they've been weaker, playing this back five this year. You think back, they nearly beat Liverpool back in October, November, whenever it was. And they've had success playing that system at Stamford Bridge this season as well. So I think what happened was he thought this is the best way to go if we're going to be weaker. The problem is, I think, this was the mistake of Solskjaer's, was they've been so good with what they've been doing recently that even with personnel changes, they should have stayed with the same system for me and make them worry more about Manchester United. I think Manchester United fans would agree with the sentiment that other teams should worry more about what they're doing rather than United worrying about what other teams are doing. And also take into the fact that Chelsea's strength has been counter-attacking. I think that's what led Solskjaer into the back five. And it just didn't work. It felt like they were short of a player the whole game, to me. That's how it felt. And I think Chelsea were ruthless and clinical in how they defended and attacked. And the goalkeeper, who got some praise from us for the first time in quite a while after the Crystal Palace game, has had an absolute shocker. And Solskjaer will sit there again in a press conference before the West Ham game, and I'm sure he'll say, David is still the best goalkeeper in the world. I'm sorry, mate. He is fucking not.
David De Gea, who's saying David De Gea is the best goalkeeper?
Solskjaer, he will say it again prior to the West Ham game. I'm telling you, he will say David De Gea is the best goalkeeper in the world. He will say it again.
I can forgive Solskjaer saying that because he's his manager and he's got to build him up. Trust me, Solskjaer knows that David De Gea is not the best goalkeeper in the world.
I'm sure he does. David De Gea might have been, but let's be honest. And we praised him after the Palace game. I thought it was great. He looked almost back to himself. But there's little things like the Mason Mount goal was really interesting, where his hands, if you just look at his hands, they look weak. He's not set. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know if his thinking is, I don't want to catch it. I want to just leave it there. And so he goes in with weak hands rather than perhaps being fearful of pushing it away. But Mount is on his own. There's no one even to push it to. So actually, if he pushes it away, it's quite safe.
And there's a distance out as well.
But there's no reason for that not just to be sitting comfortably. Now, if you go in with weak hands, that's what's likely to happen. His hands just look like they flip back, like they're almost non-existent. He hasn't got strong hands. And I think he's a goalkeeper who, for whatever reason, seems to become a little bit over-obsessed with saving with his feet because he's been so very, very good at it. And that's also become a weakness for him over the last year or two. And right now, he just looks average. There's nothing imposing about him that would make you think, oh, he's a great goalkeeper, we're going to struggle to score today or anything like that. It just simply isn't. It was a bad day for United, a really, really bad day. But they'll go back to full strength. I mean, the City team's difficult to predict, but United team, bar the question marks over probably Shaw and Williams at left back, will go back to exactly what we expect. I'm sure Matic, they'll be better as well for Matic playing, who didn't start at Palace. And then with respect, they should beat yourself comfortably if they go back to that strongest team and the right system. And I'm sure they will.
Cool. Should we do a few Twitter questions, James? Let's answer a couple. And we've had a few more, so you never know. If we're twiddling our thumbs and we just want to do a Q&A special at some point in the week with all the other questions, we might. There's a lot of free hit stuff, James, a lot of free hit stuff. And the Friday podcast that we're going to put out for all of you listeners.
Thursday.
The next main pod is Thursday. You are right, James. We'll cover a lot more on free hit options because I know that's what a lot of talk in the town is right now. So, FPL Heritage, James. Who wins the Golden Boot?
Jamie Vardy.
I think so. Now with the amount of games left, I think Jamie Vardy.
The interesting one, I can't see Danny Ings scoring a hat-trick against Sheffield United, I'm afraid to say. I think he'll probably come out on my free hit, to be honest, Danny Ings, depending on where I want to go set-up-wise. But if he'd have scored the penalty yesterday, I'd have been very, very tempted to keep him, thinking, 2 goals could get it for him. The interesting one, there's 2 interesting ones, is Aubameyang and Salah. Aubameyang particularly, I guess there's a doubt in terms of whether he starts against Villa. I suspect he will because he's got a shot at it. Now, if he goes off against Villa, which he's capable of doing, and then he's got Watford final day, he'll be a lot of people's captain on Sunday. Like, you can bet that right now. And Salah's still got half a shot. I think fixture-wise doesn't particularly appeal. Is he capable of scoring a couple against Chelsea, though, that might give him a shot? Yeah, maybe. I suspect both of those 2 players will be in my free hit of the weekend as well, though. But it's hard to see anyone's going to catch Vardy from here. Is he capable of scoring against United on Sunday? Yes, of course he is. Do I think he will? Probably not.
Rob Reed at Reedo Reads on Twitter. Will Man City score double figures versus Norwich in game week 38? I think they're going to go mental.
No, it won't even be close, mate. They're strolling out. They don't give a fuck about the league. I mean, look, they could win 5-0 without even trying.
Yeah.
But double figures, no chance. No chance.
David Stafford, DJ Staffs, 1. James, I'm going to ask this question in the tone of voice that I think David is asking this question, right? And it's obviously very clearly aimed at you. Why did you turn everyone off getting Kane?
See, the thing is, I didn't. When I say something wrong, and I'm intending, if I can, to cut the intro from last Friday where I completely fucked up with the West Ham and the garden smoking stuff. But I, far from put anybody off Harry Kane last week, I actually went through some of his goal scoring numbers. And often our job on here is not to say, buy X player, buy Y player. My job is to try and help give you some information, and then hopefully you're all big enough and old enough and ugly enough to make your own decisions from there. So actually, in the last podcast, I put a lot of numbers out there that would have been for buying Harry Kane. Me personally, at the moment, you're gonna probably be influenced by the fact I'm gonna say, look, I'm not buying him, and I'm not. But I've also said to you today, look, he's a decent option for the weekend. Was Harry Kane a great potential buy prior to playing Leicester when there were so many other cheaper options like Ings, Wood, etc., had better fixtures? In my opinion, no.
No, agree.
This weekend, I think Aubameyang is a better option at the same price. But I'm not saying you can't go and have both. And I'm not saying you can't go for Kane if you think that's the best option. The flip on Aubameyang might be, he blanks at Villa. They get beat because David Luiz goes from the 9 out of 10 to the 4 out of 10 that he's capable of beating. And don't be surprised if he has a car crash at Villa Park tomorrow night, because that's him all over. Semi-final, concentration high. Villa Park, away game, doesn't matter. Might get a bit sloppy today. That's him all over. But Aubameyang, I guess, if Arsenal can't qualify for the Europa on Saturday, do they even look at it and go, well, we'll rest players before the FA Cup final? Is that a possibility? I think with probably a 6-day gap, it would be better for them to carry on playing. But I guess that's a possibility as well. And then that would really put you off Aubameyang, and then that would maybe lead people towards Kane. If Aubameyang's got a shot at the Golden Boot, though, any shot at all, he'll play on Sunday. I'd be fairly certain of that.
And the last question going to T. Brewski, James. I think this is a quick and easy one to answer. And for anybody that sent in questions that we haven't answered, we're going to just collate some of them into some topics for discussion in the second show that we put out this week for you as well. And that will be, like James said, on Thursday. So you'll have plenty of time before the game week deadline on Sunday to digest all of that kind of stuff. And this one's an easy one for you to answer. You might be surprised with my answer. What game will you be watching in game week 38?
Sort of a fucking
or games. It says games in brackets.
There's only
You'll
one
be watching
game.
Spurs.
There's only one game I'll be watching. That's Crystal Palace and Tottenham. And talking of Crystal Palace, I don't expect them to get anything at Wolves this evening, but I would love it if they did.
I actually have invited a few friends around, James, to my house to watch the football on Saturday. Only a handful. Because
what you're going to be watching, like the FA Trophy final or something?
Because did I say Saturday?
Yeah.
Sorry, Sunday. They all know it's Sunday. Don't worry. And
3 o'clock deadline.
So I will actually, at the moment as it stands, have United and Leicester on the big screen, and I'll have West Ham on my iPad or a little screen.
Wow.
I think it's the game that will have most riding on it and could potentially be the best game of football. But more than likely, we'll swap between a few games, I reckon, and West Ham will be on my iPad or on my phone or whatever, just there.
Listen, Spurs could be 3-0 up, and it could be Mourinho defending the same way he defended yesterday. I will not be changing the channel.
I've had this season for me. Truth be told, I'm done now. I'm happy to just let it filter off and be done. So there we go. That's it, James. Guys, thank you for tuning in to our episode today. As always, we've got content coming out for you this week. So we've got the Sky Fantasy Football Show on Wednesday. Remind me, James, what we got tomorrow.
So tomorrow I'm going to do my Ask James tomorrow because we're recording with Sean and Neil for Clash of Correspondence. We're not going to record it till Thursday because obviously if we do that beforehand, we don't know where it stands for Bournemouth last game. It could be that they've got a chance. It could be that they're already down, particularly depending on obviously the Watford result. So we're not going to record that till Thursday. And when we set that up, there was a chance that yourselves playing Wednesday could still be dragged in as well. So Clash of Correspondence will be Friday. I'm going to do my Ask James stream tomorrow. Wednesday will be Sky. Thursday we'll review all the games Monday to Wednesday and look at what we're doing for game week 38.
Exactly that. For all of the patrons, if you're on the Slack channel, you'll know what's coming at you this week. But again, Tottenham, bit of a quiz, and we'll be looking deeper into the Watford rumours, etc., etc. So there'll be content every day that you will love. If you do fancy joining our Patreon, then head over to patreon.com/PlanetFPL, where you'll get 5 additional podcasts, access to our Slack channels and mini leagues and all that kind of other stuff as well. Other than that, stay safe. I hope the rest of Game Week 37 is good for you, and good luck with that. Ciao for now.
Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man, child.